Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dallas Daily Show Midweek MindSHIFT episode. So glad to have you here, coming at you from the Neighborhood Loan Studio in St. Louis, Missouri. And today's topic is going to be the Midweek MindSHIFT Say Hello to Future You. We're talking the second part of this journey today. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so a couple of weeks ago, we started these MindSHIFT episodes. In the middle of the week, usually Monday through Friday, we're coming at you 5 days a week. And on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, it's usually about 7 minutes. On the midweek episode, we dive a little bit deeper into the midweek MindSHIFT because I think it's important every now and again for us to begin to consider what are the things that I want to shift in my thinking. And all of these episodes for you are not only on our YouTube channel, but we've got this playlist, the MindSHIFT playlist, linked below for you as well. So you can just watch these episodes as kind of their own special track. But the whole idea here is there's a ton of mindset coaches out there, and there's a set way that we've been told that we have to go about creating our new self, creating transformation, changing our mindset. And usually what happens with those is no matter how much coaching we do, we kind of get caught in the same belief behavior. When a trigger happens, we get caught in this same belief behavior cycle that just kind of keeps us stuck. And it puts us on a trajectory. And yeah, I'm looking at you right now, camera too. It puts us on a trajectory of a future us we want to avoid. So that's one side of it. But over here on this side of it is a future us that we want to become. There's a couple of potentials out there for you. There's the future you that you want to avoid and the future you want to become. And too many times what happens to us is this trigger belief behavior cycle keeps us stuck. And so it doesn't matter how much self-improvement we do if we're staying in the same mindset. It doesn't matter how much of the self-help books we read, of how many of the gurus that we follow, if we never address the fact that a lot of the programming and a lot of the beliefs and behaviors actually came from our past. They came from a past us. When we were children, when we were kids, it was the things that we were told by our teachers, by our family, by our parents, by our aunt, uncle, cousins, our siblings. It was by our closest friends who said the things about us, right? Who called us things like, you're such a moron, you're such a moron, you're such a moron. And if we heard it enough in our little brains when we were in that particular stage of cognitive development, it all seeped in. And it's not just beliefs about ourselves, it's beliefs about the world around us. This is what we've been talking about on the last few weeks of the MindSHIFT episode. It's the beliefs of the world around us. It's money doesn't grow on, right, trees, right? Just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Let's go with another one, right? Everything that can go wrong will go wrong. Absolutely. We're taught things like Murphy's Law. We're taught things like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Nothing ever goes right. I've gone through a few of these scripts in previous MindSHIFTs, so I don't want to stay too long here. But the idea is that stuff was planted back in our past, and we keep trying to change our present, but we never address the programming inside of us, which is past programming. Bob Proctor, in his brilliant book, Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life, and really everything that he did, he's no longer with us. God rest his soul. Sandy Gallagher is the head of the Proctor Gallagher Institute, but he was one of the front runners on this idea of paradigm and how the programming from our past is giving us present results that are not helping us. All right, so I began to think, as I've studied him for the past few years and studied Maxwell Maltz and Earl Nightingale, and I know I'm throwing a bunch of names at you right now, Joe Dispenza and Napoleon Hill and all of these people who were kind of forerunners of what we would call self-help movement, they actually angled it differently than I see it nowadays, because I see a lot of coaches and I see a lot of consultants talk about this concept that you can change your attitude and change your belief and behavior, but they never talk about changing your programming. And that's where the mind shift happens. We have to get out of a mindset that means a set mind and set way of thinking, and we have to begin to shift. Well, how do we do that? Well, we talked about it a little bit on this pod so far and in this series is there is a future you. Joe Dispenza talks about all the endless possibilities in his book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Brilliant book, by the way, and I've addressed this one before on the pod too, but he talks about this idea of in quantum physics, there's all of these potentialities and possibilities out there. You could become a million different versions of you, right? Marvel movies have really laid into this over the last few years of the multiverse of possibilities. Here's what I know. Your conscience exists right now in this one, but in front of you, there is a multiple opportunities for you to become something. And too many of us are on the trajectory of becoming the person we don't want to become. And so there's a future out there that when you think about it, you're like, I really I don't want to end up like my dad, or I don't want to end up like my grandpa. I don't want to end up like my brothers. Oh boy, I don't want to end up like that person. Boy, I definitely don't want to be like my boss, right? And we say all of these things, and what it does for us is it's actually targeting those things anyway. So then we're surprised and we're angry and we're frustrated when we're like, I'm becoming the very thing that I hate. I'm becoming the very thing that I fear. There's this really interesting, and you guys know where I sit on the religious scale. I'm a Bible guy. I'm a Jesus guy. But there's this really interesting thing in the book of Job, and Job's whole world is imploded and all of this stuff. And there's this one sentence that I think is very telling, and it's, the very thing I feared has come upon me. Let me say that one again. The very thing I feared has come upon me. So he literally was putting himself on a trajectory of an outcome he didn't want, but because he became obsessed with the fear of the possibility of the outcome and never changed his programming from the past, it actually happened in his life. And I would say that you and I sit on the precipice, on the cusp of that possibility now, whether it's a fear about your future finances, maybe, whether it's a fear about your present finances, whether it's a fear about, the other shoe's going to drop. Boy, I had to pay for A, B, and C this week. I wonder what else I'm going to have to pay for, right? And then you have to, and then you're like, of course it came to pass that way. That's what begins to happen because we find ourselves in these loops of self-talk. How do we get out of that? Well, there's the other future us, right? So there's the future us we want to avoid. And then over on this side, there's the future us that we want to become, the future version of who we are that we want to be. This is the idealized version of you, that when you think about your possible future, when you think about who you are becoming, you go, man, if I could attain this, that'd be great. Or, boy, I really want, how many of us in our world actually begin to think to ourselves, I don't want a great marriage, or I don't want my kids to love me after they grow up, or boy, I really hope I get to be poor. Boy, I really hope I get to be sick. Like, none of us think that crap. We're all out here hoping for the best, believing for the best, setting ourselves up for success. We literally are working for our future all the time. And yet somehow in our world, we tell all of these old scripts. So the mind shift is to actually build a picture and build a personality. Hello, plant. A personality of who this future version of yourself is, so that you can begin to feel like them, think like them, speak like them, behave like them. Instead of speaking and behaving like the old you begin to speak like, feel like, behave like the version you want to become. And here's the amazing thing. The moment you start doing that, you all of a sudden stop the old trajectory and start the new one. And you actually start becoming this new version of yourself. So that's the mind shift that we need to have, is there is a future you that you have to say hello to. And last week, we talked about step one. We've been talking about the 5 steps in this series. Number 1, visualize. 2, today's topic, emotionalize. Then we're going to talk about vocalizing it until we internalize it and ultimately actualize it. The 5 steps of the future you, the 5 steps of actually bringing this person into reality. Last week, we talked about number 1, visualize. And for the rest of our conversation today, we're going to talk about the idea of step number 2, how we can emotionalize this version of us. And we're going to get to that in just a moment. If you are a business professional and you're looking to lose 25 to 50 pounds of that stubborn belly fat over the next 90 days, I want to tell you about one of the programs from our sponsors, the Shed Fat Fast program with Joel Staley. Joel has helped over 1,500 clients lose all of that fat, get in the best shape of their life, and he does it with a proprietary fasting protocol that's guaranteed to get you results without giving up the food that you love. I know it works because I'm in the program right now, and I'm telling you, this thing is getting me results. I know it can get you results as well. He's got a free training for you. Go to shedfatfast.com. That's shedfatfast.com. Check out his free training. And when you call in, be sure and mention that you heard about it from the Dallas Daily Show. Hey, everybody, I just want to give a quick shout out to our studio sponsor here at Neighborhood Loans Studio in St. Louis, Missouri. If you're in the market for a new home, look no further. Their 5-star team is excellent. They can help you get what you need. And I can personally connect you with their team, or you can check out their website, neighborhoodloans.com. Again, that's neighborhoodloans.com, or feel free to call them 314-658-9400. Again, that's 314-658-9400. And even though the studio's located here in St. Louis, Missouri, they can service you nationwide. So trust me when I say you are in the best hands with Neighborhood Loans. All right, so let's get into the actual second step here of this process. So step number 1, again, visualize. To use a Tony Robbins quote, you have to create a picture of a compelling future. Okay, that's step number 1. And a lot of people do that with their vision boards, right? They create the vision boards, and these were huge a couple of years ago. And I think around every January, they get a little bump up as well, where people are like, I'm going to create my vision for the new year. And so that happens, which is great. But a lot of people think that creating the vision is enough. We're going to find out that's only the first of the 5 steps. And again, I just said the 5 steps to you before the ad break. But step number 1 is visualize. Step number 2, we're talking about today, emotionalize. And then it's about vocalizing until you internalize it, and then you actualize it. And that sounds like a lot of steps in the process, but it's really not, because they just start to happen quickly over time. These first 2 are crucial, though, to the initiation of this process of the mind shift to say hello to future you. So first, we build the compelling picture. That's the visualize. And if you'd like to know more about that, again, we've got this process in the videos below in the notes for you, the visualize one. The second step, though, emotionalizing it. Here's the idea. If the vision that you create isn't firing up your soul, then it means it's not the right vision. I remember as a kid, I remember very viscerally, I was a huge pro wrestling fan, okay? Huge pro wrestling fan growing up. Yes, I enjoyed watching the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan. And as I grew a little bit older, I was here in St. Louis during the greatest show on turf, Kurt Warner and all of those guys. I've been a Patriots fan for 20 plus years now. Pre-Brady, by the way, don't you all say I was a fair weather fan. I was a fan when Drew Bledsoe was their quarterback. So don't you dare come at me with my fair weatherness. And P.S. we suck now, so you can come at me all you want, I suppose. But what I loved as a kid was I would imagine I was the guy, right? I'd get on the mic and I'd cut the promo, brother. I would do all of the things. And we had a trampoline in our backyard, and it wasn't, nowadays they make the circle trams. Ours was a rectangle, and it was up against the deck of our house, like the fence deck of our house. So that deck, guess what that became? That became the cage that I would jump off of and do all the stuff, and I would wrestle. My brother and I would wrestle, or I'd wrestle neighborhood kids, or sometimes I'd go out there and wrestle an imaginary guy, and I'd body slam him, and I'd drop the macho man elbow and do all the things that I did as a kid. But I had this really big imagination to the point where I actually could feel the emotions of the crowd. Now, stick with me here, because a lot of us are in our 30s, 40s, maybe 50s or 60s at this point, and we're starting to say, yeah, but you can't imagine that kind of stuff. No, I actually think you do, and I think you can. I think what happens, and I talked about this in the pod before about my anxiety, is sometimes what we do is we simply imagine, here at camera 2, I'll say it to you, we imagine the worst possible outcome. Let me ask you this question right here, okay? Have you ever found yourself in an environment, I personally, when I was dealing with my anxiety, if I were in large packed crowds in a closed room, I immediately, a police friend of mine called it cased the room, and I would look for the exits. Just a quick show of hands, unless you're driving 10 and 2, baby, 10 and 2. Quick show of hands. Have you ever cased a room? Have you ever wondered, oh boy, what if something happened right now? What if an intruder came in? What if this happened? Now, maybe you don't. That's great. Good for you. But maybe you do. Guess what that was? You actually began to feel it in your emotions, what it was like. Let me ask you this. What about in a sales conversation? Sales conversation, you're going in to do a presentation for a prospect or going in to talk to your board, and you start to get all the butterflies in your stomach and you start to feel nervous about it. Guess what that is? That's adrenaline and emotion toward a imagined possible outcome. I hope this goes well. Boy, what if this goes wrong? All right, how do I need to fix that? And you begin to imagine it. We use our imagination all the time as adults. We just don't call it that anymore. We don't call it the play wrestling with the guys on the trampoline, the imaginary friends on the trampoline, and dropping the elbow and hearing the crowd and holding up your arms in victory and be like, yes, yes, I am. We don't do that now necessarily, but we still use our imagination, and we definitely still use our emotions. When was the last time you were fired up about something really exciting, really spectacular? You were using your emotions. When was the last time you got really excited about, I don't know, a car or a purchase or a vacation or concert tickets, and you actually were like, or a sporting event, right? You got great seats to go see the local hockey team do their thing. Right? You got excited about it. That's the idea. We are emotional creatures. Our limbic system is incredible, how it fires into our emotions. But what happens is when we start to think about the future, a lot of us build a visual picture that is simply analytical, and it just ain't enough. I was reading this last week. This was a really, really fascinating thing. I'm reading this book on the power of the subconscious mind. One of the things it said is neuroscience is beginning to discover that your body cannot tell the difference between an actual event and the imagined version of that event. Your body chemically starts to respond in the same way between an actual event and an imagined event. That's huge. So when you start to think about visualizing this future you and then emotionalizing it, if all you're doing is an analytical practice of, oh, here's what I want to look like in the next 3 to 5 years, physically, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, right? We covered those 4 areas last week. Here's how I want to look at my life. Well, that's great. That's an analytical conversation. But if when you begin to look at the picture of that person of who you would like to be, again, the idealized version of yourself, or so you think, if you begin to look at that person and it doesn't fire up your soul, then it's not quite the right picture. You don't have a strong enough image of what you want it to look like. Now, you've got a strong image of not wanting to be sick and broken and in the wheelchair and on all the medications and not being able to enjoy your elderly years. You know what that picture looks like, and it fills you with fear when the doctor says, hey, if you don't change your ways, you're going to end up this way. The doctor's leveraging fear there. Now, take it over to the other side of the imagination equation. What if you could leverage this vision of who you want to become, the manifest, idealized version of you that you can actualize? What if you could build that picture in such a way, again, that it's so compelling that you go, oh, when I think about that guy, I get fired up. I can tell you right now from my own life, when I think about what Dallas is going to do in his business in the next 3 to 5 years, I talk to future me all the time. When a problem arises in my business, I go, hey, Dallas, what would you do here? Hey, future Dallas, right? What would you do here? And because I've so built this person over the last, in the last, I'd say 6 months, I've really got a compelling me. But I've been doing this for 4 years now. Every day reading the stuff, working on the old scripts, trying to undo some of the old crap that's in my brain and getting anchored to this future version of me. And the amount of acceleration that I have felt personally, professionally, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, relationally in the last 4 to 6 months has been ecstatic. And this guy, I've got such a clear picture of who he is now. He's so compelling to me that I actually use him as one of my counsel. But I will actually, when something comes up, I'll go, hey, future Dallas, what would you do here? And I just wait because I know I'm going to get the answer. And I'm getting out of the emotion of the present and the problems and the triggers and the beliefs of who I currently am and who I've always been. And instead, I'm reaching toward a compelling version of myself, someone that gets me excited when I think about it. When I think about what my body's going to look like in the next 6 months to 12 months, oh, baby, my wife's going to be smacking my butt and being like, what's up, sexy? That gets me fired up. That gets me emotional. When I think about the fact that I'm going to be able to be the dad I'm playing in the backyard with my kids. I'm the one running with my sons. I'm the one who's going to have a home gym that we're all working out together. I have 3 boys. I can't wait to be in that process with them. I'm the one who's eating the healthy foods. I'm the one who feels great. I'm the grandpa who's able to play on the floor with his grandchildren. And I'm the one that's like, Paul, you're the active one. Absolutely. I'm the one who's going to be able to take the Mediterranean cruise with my wife and not even consider what it costs. That's and that guy, oh, I'm excited about that guy. So when I get excited about that guy, what begins to happen inside of me is I'm drawn to become him. So that's kind of what has to happen is step 1 and step 2 have to happen coinciding. They have to hold hands, visualize and emotionalize. So if the picture you create doesn't fire up your soul, doesn't rewire your neurons, doesn't inspire you toward action, my friend, I would consider you need to possibly look at getting the new picture in place. What would it look like for you so that you desire it? Let it inspire you. Let it fire you. Let it rewire you. Let it drive you up to the future you that you want to become. That's how this game starts to work, is finally getting inspired. And here's where I'm going to drive it home for you. Maybe you have sat in the present so long that you have no idea how to even build the picture. We've got a resource on the website for you. Step number 1, where you're going to build out the visualize of spiritual, relational, professional, and financial, all of the elements, the physical part of who you are, all of it. Spiritual, physical, relational, and professional. That's there for you as a resource on the website. I want you to get it, and I want you to consider joining us in our 5-day Future You Challenge. Okay, it's a small little thing for you to do every day, small little video to watch, small little exercise to do. And within 5 days, you're going to have this power script of who you want to become so that you can start the new year out becoming that person, getting on that trajectory. Get off the old train, get on the new trajectory. Become the future version of yourself. Number 1, visualize. And today, number 2, emotionalize it until it inspires you up. Even just talking about this gets me excited. I am way past time for this episode, so I'm going to end it now. And what I'm going to say, guys, is go to the website, get what you need to get there, but let's start to visualize it. Let's start to emotionalize it. Let's get toward a future you that you can say hello to, because ultimately the future you is going to be the mind shift that's going to get you out of the old belief behavior cycle and becoming the future you ultimately want to be. All right, that's it. That's all I got for you. Tomorrow we're coming back. We're continuing our conversation this week on adjustments in our lives, but tomorrow we'll be back at you with that. But in the meantime, my friends, hit the website, dallasdailyshow.com. Reach out to me on all the socials at Dallas Amsden. Watch the rest of the MindShift series here in the notes below, and go out there, have a championship day.
Thanks for listening to my dad's podcast. For more tools, go to dallasdailyshow.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.